beautiful photos of Kristen and I growing up. It may have looked like an idyllic childhood. We were happy, we were young. There was a dark side that none of you were aware of. When Kristen and I were little, our mother convinced us, beyond any doubt, that at any moment, a group of professional kidnappers was going to come in and steal us away forever. It's a true story. And literally, we were terrified. To go downstairs at night, to go downstairs after dark, to go outside. I didn't know that people did not lock their doors until I visited my husband's hometown 2 years ago. Just this past Thursday, my mother, I'd gone to just fallen asleep after work and forgotten to call her, left me at least 6 or 7 messages asking if I'd been kidnapped, and then called at midnight to confirm with my husband to make sure I'd made it home okay. So, not really an exaggeration. But when we were little, Kristen and I, who were inseparable, sometimes my mom worked nights. And the other thing about my mother is she also convinced us that she was the only one who could possibly save us. Death by car accident, if she were in the car, we'd be fine. Kidnappers came, she'd have superhuman powers, we would be completely fine. So she was working nights, and Kristen and I were home with our dad, as we often were. And, you know, kids, they need drinks in the middle of the night, too. So we developed this habit where we would work up the courage to go out into the hallway, which was scary, and then walk down the hallway, which was frightening, and then go into my dad's room and wake him up and get us to get a drink. Because we couldn't go downstairs, it would just be too much. So Kristen also was a brave one. I would send her on missions. I'd be like, go check the hallway, and I would be waiting inside. Yeah. So we did this for a while, and my father was kind of getting sick of it, but you know, we were little. We were like 4 and 7, so you would think he would play it. So one night, we work up the courage to go into his room, and we're in there, and I say, Kristen, and we're like, Dad, we need a drink, and he just doesn't move. And I'm like, Kristen, go poke him. And so she like tiptoes over, and she's like, now, nothing happens. My father is like the most dead to the world sleeper you can get. So I'm like, Kristen, poke him again. So she goes over and she pokes him again. My father sits straight up in bed and says, put that cup down and go back to bed. We ran screaming from the room as if we were possessed. And we literally sat up all night waiting for our mother to come home and save us from whoever had possessed our father. And my father to this day claims that he was asleep and doesn't remember that, but I think he was just making a point. A couple years later, many years later, Kristen had her 21st birthday party at our house, and Keith was there. And I just remember we had friends over, we had a couple beers, celebrating that she could drink. Kristen and I were sleeping in the same bed that night. We woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning. My mom had mirrors over our mouths to make sure we were still breathing. But we survived all of that, and we have a lot of great memories. Kristen and I went, very fortunate, we went to the same preschool, grammar school, junior high school, and then I went to Columbia. I never dreamed that she would come there with me. And in fact, when she told me she was thinking about applying, I told her that the boys there were a little weird and she should consider a different school. So I was a senior, Kristen was a freshman, and she'd been a real star in high school. She was the head of everything, everyone knew her, she planned the prom. So when she got to Columbia, I think she just, was expecting kind of the same thing, but on the first day they don't know you're a star. You have to tell them. So she meets her roommate, who ends up being this very, very religious woman, and Kristen calls me and she's like, my roommate keeps calling me, asking me to go stand in the hallway. She's like, is that normal? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, randomly, she'll be like, you have to get up now at 6 o'clock in the morning and go stand in the hallway, I want to get dressed. And I tried to put a stop to that, and I said to Kristen, you have to seize the moment, you need to make a new friend, go out into the hallway and introduce yourself to someone. She's like, I can't. I'm like, pull yourself together. We're not going to cry about this. Go out there. So she was in Carmen 12 at the time at Columbia, and she marched herself out into the hallway, and there was Keith, I think standing with his father. I think they were there together, and she introduced herself. And then we come to the point of the story. The real reason that we're here today is because of me. I'd like to say, and so it was, they found each other, and it's been amazing. There were some dark times, though. I mean, they didn't fall in love right away. There was a summer where Keith, I'm not sure if the Palmieri's are aware of this, but did not call. Did not call. And I spent a lot of hours in Kristen's room with her, saying, what could he be doing? I'm like, well, he's playing baseball. Let's go online, let's check the schedule. He's probably doing something. And And that was the summer, I think, between friendship and true love. And I knew that summer she was angsting about it, that Keith was someone who would be more than a friend. But I never suspected that they could find happiness like this. And I just want to say that Kristen, those of you who know her know she's the most generous, wonderful, thoughtful person. She makes everything better. And if you feel lucky for having had her in your life for 2 years or 5 years, just know how lucky I am to have had her by my side for all of my life that I remember. I don't really remember a moment without her, and I really just would not want to. And as for Keith, he is just such a blessing to our family. I can't even tell you. He is the sanest person in the room at all times. When everyone is screaming at me and telling me, Keith will bring sanity to any situation. And he is just, this to me was an inevitable day from the beginning. It was something that was going to happen. It wasn't a question of if he would become a part of our family, because he already is, but when. And Keith, I love you like a brother. Today in church, my heart was just overflowing with happiness and tears, just because I could not wish anyone a better relationship or a better person to spend the rest of their life with than you. And I love you guys. Cheers. Congratulations.
This time we'd like to call upon Best Man.
Make us proud.
I'm going to use the stand because I'm just going to read mine. I wrote it yesterday.
Oh great, you broke it.
Right, I'm going to read mine because I wrote it yesterday under some duress and have had little time to rehearse. So I'm going to read you mine. Here it goes. Large font, double-spaced. I know it looks daunting. It is customary for the best man to orchestrate or at least play a key role in the bachelor party. But I, tonight's best man, neither helped to plan nor attended Keith's bachelor party a few weeks ago, which entailed a trip to Atlantic City. My attendance was prevented for professional reasons. My contribution was prevented by my father's taking charge of the whole affair, commenting at one point, and I quote, "Mark's idea of a great night would be to take everyone to a Shakespeare lecture." This is almost true. Taking everyone to a Shakespeare lecture I would indeed consider a good night, but great only if I were the one giving the lecture. I do, however, get to give this speech, not necessarily because I am literally the best of men in my brother's life, you all may debate that privately, but by the clever design of our mother, who composed a method by which each of her boys would be accompanied at the altar by one of his brothers without anyone being left out. It was organized by age. I had Scott, Scott had John, John had Keith, and Keith has me, and the following Shakespeare lecture. My father's mildly offensive comment did get me thinking about Shakespeare, the great playwright of love. A typically structured Shakespearean love story is 5 acts. The lovers meet in Act 1 and marry in Act 5. The audience watches as obstacles, setbacks, confusions, and disasters beset the lovers in Acts 2, 3, and 4 until at last, often having removed to some magical island or enchanted forest, all obstacles are overcome and the lovers are joined. And the audience gets what it paid for and so naturally desired to see. After so long grief, Lady Abbess says in the Comedy of Errors, such felicity. Well, that would put all of us tonight squarely in Act 5. We are even on an island, and in a sense, in an enchanted forest. But where the story of Keith and Kristen strays from the Shakespearean structure is quite early. Their meeting, Act 1, took place uptown at Columbia, but ever since, as this wedding night approached, the audience, except for Nicole, who seems to have witnessed a strange summer between friendship and true love, The rest of us witnessed absolutely no obstacles, no setbacks, confusions, or disasters. These two lovers have been from the beginning, as far as I could see, as they are right now. A perfect pair, a complete unit, a lovey-dovey couple, always together, hugging, kissing, holding hands. Morning, noon, night, weekend, workday, come rain or shine, hell or high water. I find it ironic that most likely their beautiful wedding mass was probably the longest they've ever gone without making out. I can assure you, as a playwright, that if a theater audience paid for tickets to see this story on the stage, these lovers might be booed for being impossibly happy. Now, all my life, as the eldest of 9 Palmieri children, I've had the ironic pleasure of looking back at people younger and better than myself. I've had much to admire and envy across my 8 siblings, but it's a happy envy, it's pleasure. In Keith, I have the same happy envy and the deepest admiration and amazement. By accident of nature, by birth order, it so happened that the timing of our lives grew more in sync as we got older. And in my early adulthood and beyond, I've had more of an opportunity to spend time with Keith than any other sibling. When I returned from college, I coached him in high school baseball, got to know him as a teenager. When he chose to attend Columbia, I was living in Manhattan, got to know him as a young man. As the years passed, my wife and I got to know Keith and Kristen as a couple. In fact, at one point, they lived in Sin, only 2 blocks from us in Astoria. Now there are many roads to Cana. But before our more mature years, away from our parents' roof, Keith was something of a mystery to me. A quiet, reclusive child who fantasized intensely that he was a suburban Clark Kent. A deep thinker who sucked his thumb well into grade school. And a humble but passionate team player. As our youngest brother, he was often ordered during our intra-family sporting events to remain standing on a painted X, on the ground some distance from the action. This, we felt, would keep Keith close enough to let him think he was in the game, but still ensuring he remained safe from injury, or from interfering with our high-quality athletics. This experience was strangely paralleled years later when Coach Aoki put him at third base. The remarkable thing that illustrates Keith's bounteous and empathetic nature is that despite being marooned on that X, he still broke a sweat. Fully engaged, fully subject to the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, and this while not really being on either team. Now, in Shakespearean love comedy, there are 2 types of obstacles that must be overcome before the wedding in Act 5. External obstacles might be a disapproving father, a wall, a war, a law, a rival, something that must be escaped. Internal obstacles would be something within, a vow of celibacy, depression, self-absorption, something that must be shed personally or disavowed. Keith, for some time, we all feared, had this type, the internal obstacle. It was widely known throughout the house, thanks much to our mother's bemoaning it aloud on occasion, that when Keith approached the more, say, defining hours of his life, these hours we all must face along the way, at school, on the playing field, in our social circles, etc., it was not his spirit or resolve that would falter, tremble, shake, but rather, as my mother put it, that stomach. My brother is a brave man, make no mistake, a maverick, uniquely self-motivated. He's talented, articulate, intellectual, well-read, sporty, handsome, and open-minded. And yet, in spite of these qualities and certain success in any endeavor, the K-man's gut would revolt. When something major approached, a class presentation, a big game, a new sacrament, first came the vomit. Tradition has it that my parents, car packed for the freshman dorms in Morningside Heights, had to pull over on the LIE. But as we all know, Keith made excellent grades, was MVP of his high school baseball team, president of his fraternity, captain of his college team, has a master's, a great job, and has won the heart of the most wonderful of women. Indeed, this regurgitative reflex has been no obstacle at all, but rather perhaps merely a herald of his many triumphant moments and sound choices. One short anecdote from Keith's romantic past. It is the only anecdote from Keith's romantic past. It was somewhere in high school. Keith was 17 or thereabout. A local beauty had fallen for him and hotly pursued a relationship. Keith took some weeks to determine just where his heart lay and sought my counsel. Mark, I have to break up with her, I think. Really? I asked. Now, we went to Chaminade High School, all boys. No matter how anguished one might be in a romantic relationship, it is a huge leap of faith to break up with someone. At Chaminade, if you're lucky enough to know a girl, you are convinced that you will probably never meet another one again. Why do you have to break up with her, Keith? She calls me too much. I was impressed and worried. He drove off to see her somewhere and returned hours later. He looked okay, severe, but steadfast. Did you do it, Keith? I did it. You look rough. Did you cry? He closed his eyes and said to me, she cried. I threw up. True story. And so the man who met his future wife that first fall at Columbia had faith, even then, that someday she would arrive in his life, and that he would love her. He could wait. She would come someday, and so she did. Kristen, from the very beginning, I thank God that you had found my brother. It takes one only a moment to know upon meeting you that the world is a more beautiful place with you in it. From those early days on the grassy hill at Baker Field for those double headers, as we watched Keith go 1 for 7 with 3 ground outs and pull a muscle, to the last days, Captain Keith, the theme from Superman from the speakers, all Ivy, honorable mention, 3 for 11 with a double and pulled muscle. You, Kristen, made the experience joyful. And that, let me assure all of you, was no small feat. On more than one bitter Sunday doubleheader, they were excruciating. Not all, but some. Over the years, Kristen, you have been more than a sister to my wife, more than a friend to my parents and siblings. You have been a fixed and essential source of vitality and love. For our child, you and your family acted with heroic determination to deliver us a new team of doctors, who have given us a confidence and strength we feared we were losing, and for that I could never properly thank you in any speech, not even close. Your laughter, your brilliance, your support, and your patience with me have been a constant in my life, and I don't know what more one could pray for in a person who marries his brother. I love you, and I have grown so accustomed to having you in my family that without you it would be unrecognizable to me. So my toast tonight, ultimately, is a personal thanks to you both. Not only for what you've already provided me and my family for so many years, but for this very night, this scene, this final act in a season that had to me seemed to threaten here and there that so long grief may turn out to last so much longer. For weeks now, my wife and I have looked toward this night with all the hope we could muster that Nora June would have been born healthy, and that indeed her future, like yours, would begin with all the renewal and hope of a classical comedy. And so it has. So raise your glasses, please, and drink a toast to Keith and Kristen, whose marriage tonight falls right in line with all they have known together since Act 1, which might easily be put like this. After so long felicity, such felicity.
Next round of applause, our best man,